The lesson I want you to learn is it doesn't matter what you look like. What does matter is the size of your heart and the strength of your character.
Behind the cobwebs and monster makeup of 1313 Mockingbird Lane lurked some truly bizarre secrets, from illegal coffin purchases and whiskey-fueled parade appearances to melting makeup and a lost Easter special that disappeared for over 30 years. The beloved monster family wasn't quite what audiences thought, and the chaos behind the scenes was often stranger than anything shown on screen. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Munsters, 1964. Fact 1. Herman was purple, not green.
Edward Wolfgang Munster, you're wearing those hoodlum clothes again.
When you picture Herman Munster today, you probably imagine him with green skin, just like Frankenstein's monster in the classic Universal horror films. But here's something that might shock you. During the original 1964 series, Fred Gwynne wasn't painted green at all. His face was actually covered in bright violet makeup, and there was a very practical reason for this unusual color choice. Since The Munsters was filmed in black and white, the makeup artists needed to find a color that would capture the most light and create the best contrast on camera. And violet turned out to be the perfect solution for achieving that iconic, monstrous look on screen. However, this purple paint job came with some serious problems that made Fred Gwynne's life miserable during filming. The studio lights used on set were incredibly hot and intense, and when combined with the heavy padding and costume that added 40 to 50 pounds to Gwynne's frame, the heat became almost unbearable. The violet grease paint would literally begin to melt and liquefy off his skin as he stood under those blazing lights, sliding down his face in the middle of takes. Visitors to the set who came to see the lovable Herman Munster in person were sometimes in for a nasty surprise when they encountered the 6'5" actor with purple makeup running down his face and neck. It wasn't until the show made the transition to color in later movies and revivals that Herman Munster finally got his now familiar green complexion, which is the version most people remember today. Fact 2. Grandpa was younger than his daughter.
Wait a minute, Eddie. Isn't that Grandpa there? Well, it is.
One of the most amusing behind-the-scenes secrets of the Munsters involves a complete reversal of the family dynamics you saw on screen. Al Lewis played Grandpa Munster, the ancient vampire who was supposed to be hundreds of years old and constantly reminisced about the good old days in Transylvania. Meanwhile, Yvonne DiCarlo portrayed his daughter, Lily Munster, who was presented as significantly younger than her father. But here's the hilarious truth that the makeup and costumes successfully hid from television audiences. Al Lewis was actually younger than Yvonne DiCarlo in real life. In fact, Lewis was born in 1923, making him just 1 year younger than DiCarlo, who was born in 1922. This age difference, or rather the lack of one, meant that the actors playing father and daughter on screen were essentially the same age off camera. The makeup department did such an incredible job transforming Lewis into the elderly grandpa character that nobody watching the show would have ever suspected this secret. With his heavy eyebrows, exaggerated facial features, vampire fangs, and that distinctive Dracula-style appearance, Lewis completely sold the illusion of being an over-the-hill vampire who had lived for centuries. Meanwhile, DiCarlo's glamorous Bride of Frankenstein-inspired look made her appear appropriately younger than her supposed father. This bit of Hollywood magic just goes to show how powerful makeup and costuming can be in creating believable characters, even when the reality is completely different from what appears on your television screen. Fact 3. The Dragula required an illegal coffin.
Just my luck. I had to get stuck with a son-in-law who wants to do everything the hard way.
When the creators of the Munsters decided that Grandpa needed his own custom hot rod to race against Herman in the episode titled Hot Rod Herman, they came up with one of the most iconic vehicles in television history, the Dragula. This coffin-shaped dragster was designed by Tom Daniel and built by legendary car customizer George Barris, the same man who would later create the 1966 Batmobile. But building this unique vehicle presented an unexpected legal problem that forced Barris and his team to get creative in some rather questionable ways. The design called for a real coffin to be used as the body of the car, but there was one major obstacle standing in their way. California law at the time made it illegal to sell a coffin to anyone without a death certificate. Funeral homes simply weren't allowed to hand over coffins to customers unless someone had actually died, which makes sense when you think about it from a public health and funeral industry regulation standpoint. But the Munsters production team needed that coffin, and they needed it quickly, so George Barris's shop foreman, Richard Corky Corks, had to come up with a solution that bent the rules quite a bit. Corks made a deal with a funeral home director in North Hollywood that involved leaving cash payment at the funeral home and having the coffin left outside the back door after dark so it could be picked up without any official paperwork changing hands. The team would then spirit the coffin away under cover of darkness to avoid any legal complications. This covert coffin acquisition allowed them to build the Dragula, which featured a fiberglass coffin body mounted on a tubular steel dragster chassis and was powered by a 289 cubic inch Ford V8 engine capable of 350 horsepower. Fact 4. Fred Gwynne got drunk at Macy's parade.
Get him some water, quickly!
The 1964 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was a huge moment for the Munsters, as it proved the show had become a genuine cultural phenomenon worthy of appearing in one of America's most beloved holiday traditions. Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis were invited to ride down the streets of New York City in the iconic Munster coach, waving to thousands of excited children and families who lined the parade route to catch a glimpse of their favorite friendly monsters. It should have been a joyful celebration and a career highlight for Gwynne, but the reality of the situation was far less pleasant than it appeared on television. Getting into the full Herman Munster costume was an ordeal under the best of circumstances, requiring hours in the makeup chair and then wearing 40 to 50 pounds of padding along with platform boots that added 4 inches to his already towering 6'5" frame. Now imagine wearing all of that for 40 city blocks in late November weather while maintaining a cheerful demeanor and waving to crowds of enthusiastic children. The experience was so miserable for Gwynne that he later confessed to TV Guide magazine that he had found a way to cope with the situation. He spent the entire parade taking secret slugs from a bottle of whiskey he had hidden in the vehicle. In his own words, he admitted that he had to get bombed just to be able to smile and say hello to the little kiddies for 40 blocks. This revelation gives us a much different picture of that parade appearance, showing that behind Herman's cheerful waves and friendly monster smile was an actor who was physically uncomfortable, probably sweating profusely under his makeup and increasingly intoxicated as he made his way through Manhattan. Fact 5. The show was shot in color first.
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't looked.
We're new here.
She hasn't been new anywhere in years.
When the Munsters was first being developed in early 1964, the television landscape was in the middle of a major transition from black and white to color broadcasting. The creative team behind the show actually filmed the very first pilot presentation in full color, giving us a rare glimpse of what the Munster family would have looked like in living color from the very beginning. This original color pilot, which ran about 16 minutes long, featured Joan Marshall as Phoebe, the original name for what would become Lily Munster, along with Happy Nate Derman as a much more aggressive and werewolf-like version of Eddie Munster. The color footage revealed Herman with his greenish-white makeup, the elaborate sets of the Munster mansion in their full Gothic glory, and all the details that would later be hidden in the shadows of black and white photography. However, when Universal Studios and CBS executives viewed this color pilot, they made a decision that would define the entire series. They refused to pay the extra $10,000 per episode that color filming would require. This was a significant amount of money in 1964, and both the studio and the network felt that the added expense wasn't justified for a show they weren't completely sure would succeed. So the decision was made to film the entire series in black and white instead, which actually ended up working to the show's advantage in many ways. The black and white photography gave the Munsters a more authentic connection to the classic Universal monster movies of the 1930s and 40s, creating that vintage horror movie atmosphere that became one of the show's most distinctive features. The color pilot never aired during the original run and remained relatively unknown until it was eventually included as a bonus feature on the Season 1 DVD release many decades later. Fact 6. Batman killed the Munsters.
Time? What's the matter?
Where do you want it?
Why don't you try and hit it over the center field fence?
Gotcha.
The Munsters enjoyed a very successful first season in 1964 and 1965, ranking as the number 18 show on television and tying with Gilligan's Island in the ratings. The show had found its audience, the merchandise was selling well, and everything seemed to be going perfectly for the monster family of Mockingbird Lane. But then something happened that would ultimately doom the series. ABC premiered a new show in January of 1966 that would become one of the biggest television phenomena of the entire decade. Batman, starring Adam West and Burt Ward, was an instant sensation that kicked off a merchandising bonanza known as Batmania that swept across America. The show featured bright, colorful visuals, campy humor, action-packed sequences, and most importantly, a unique twice-weekly broadcast schedule that proved devastating to the Munsters. Batman aired at 7:30 on Wednesday nights, with each episode ending on a cliffhanger that would be resolved in the second episode, airing Thursday night at 7:30, which placed it in direct competition with the Munsters. Audiences, especially younger viewers, were far more interested in seeing how Batman and Robin would escape each week's elaborate death trap than in watching the gentle antics of Herman and his monster family. The Munsters' ratings began to erode rapidly, dropping from number 18 all the way down to number 61 in the 1965 to 1966 season. Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster, later confirmed in a 2019 interview with the Daily Mail exactly what everyone suspected, stating plainly that Batman was to blame and that the Caped Crusader just came along and took their ratings away. CBS canceled the Munsters in May of 1966 after just 70 episodes, while Batman continued as a phenomenon, though ironically, Batman's own popularity would prove short-lived, and that series was also canceled by the end of its third season in 1968. Fact 7. The original Lily looked too much like Morticia.
If Eddie wants to run and jump, Herman should have let me use my magic. The only way that...
When the first pilot for the Munsters was being cast in early 1964, the producers needed to find the perfect actress to play Herman's wife, who was originally named Phoebe rather than Lily. They cast Joan Marshall, an experienced television actress who had appeared in shows like The Twilight Zone, to bring this Bride of Frankenstein-inspired character to life. Marshall's portrayal in the color pilot gave Phoebe a very specific look that was heavily influenced by Vampira, the television horror host character created by Mila Nurmi, who had herself been inspired by the Gothic style found in Charles Addams' famous cartoons. But there was one major problem that became immediately apparent when network executives and producers watched the completed pilot. Joan Marshall's appearance as Phoebe looked far too similar to Morticia Addams, the matriarch of the Addams family, which was being developed for ABC at almost exactly the same time. Both shows were competing for the same audience with their monster family sitcom concepts, and the Addams family would actually premiere on September 18, 1964, just 6 days before the Munsters debuted on September 24th. The executives realized that having two shows with such similar-looking female leads would create confusion among viewers and potentially hurt both programs in the ratings battle that was sure to come. So the decision was made to recast the role entirely and give the character a fresh start with a new name and a different visual approach. They brought in Yvonne De Carlo, who had been a major Hollywood star in adventure films and westerns during the 1940s and 50s, to take over the part, which was now renamed Lily Munster. De Carlo brought her own unique style to the character, making Lily more glamorous and distinct from Morticia's sleek Gothic elegance, which helped both shows establish their own separate identities in the minds of television audiences. Fact 8. Grandpa's lab used original Frankenstein props.
Mr. Dennison, just a minute. You can't talk to me that way. I guess you can.
One of the most visually striking sets on the Munsters was Grandpa's laboratory, located in the dungeon beneath the Munster mansion at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. This mad scientist workspace was filled with bubbling beakers, electrical equipment, strange contraptions, and all manner of scientific apparatus that Grandpa used for his various experiments and potion-making schemes throughout the series. But what most viewers never realized was that they weren't just looking at random props thrown together to create a spooky laboratory atmosphere. They were actually seeing genuine pieces of Hollywood history that dated back to the golden age of Universal horror films. Kenneth Strick-Faden was the special effects technician who had originally designed and built the elaborate electrical equipment for the 1931 Frankenstein film starring Boris Karloff, creating those iconic crackling Tesla coils, Jacob's ladders, and other futuristic-looking devices that brought Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory to life on screen. Strick-Faden had stored all of this equipment over the years and had used it again for other Universal horror productions throughout the 1930s and 40s. When the Munsters went into production in 1964, the studio brought Strick-Faden back and asked him to set up Grandpa's laboratory using his original Frankenstein equipment. This gave the show an authentic connection to the classic monster movies that had inspired it and provided a direct visual link to the Universal horror legacy. The crackling electrical effects, the mysterious glowing equipment, and all those wonderful mad scientist touches that appeared in Grandpa's scenes weren't just clever reproductions. They were the actual devices that had been used to create one of the most iconic movie monsters in cinema history more than 30 years earlier. Fact 9. The mansion was used for desperate housewives.
Uncle Herman, there's someone up here to see you.
The exterior of the Munster mansion that viewers saw in every episode of the Munsters wasn't actually a real house at all, but rather a carefully designed facade located on the Colonial Street section of the Universal Studios backlot in Hollywood. This particular house set had a long and interesting history that stretched back decades before the Munsters ever moved in. The structure was originally built in 1946 for the romantic comedy film So Goes My Love, which starred Donna Meche and Myrna Loy, and it was constructed in the Second Empire Victorian architectural style with that distinctive mansard roof and tower. After the film wrapped, the house was put into storage before being moved to the newly constructed Colonial Street area of the Universal lot in the early 1950s, where it became known as the Maxim House. When the Munsters needed a suitably spooky exterior for their monster family home in 1964, the art department gave this house a major makeover that cost around $1 million. They added a stone wall around the property, installed a crooked vampire bat weather vane, modified the tower to create a covered widow's walk, added dead trees and scattered dead leaves around the grounds, and applied darker paint to give everything a more decrepit and haunted appearance. After the Munsters ended its run in 1966, the house was gradually restored to a less gothic appearance and continued to appear in various television shows and movies over the decades. It was seen in Leave It to Beaver, Coach, and many other productions before undergoing another major transformation in 2004 when ABC's Desperate Housewives began filming on Colonial Street, which was redressed to become the show's Wisteria Lane. The former Munster mansion was remodeled yet again to look less spooky and became the home of several characters throughout Desperate Housewives' 8-season run, proving that this versatile piece of Hollywood history could serve as both a monster's mansion and a suburban family home. Fact 10. Fred Gwynne lost 10 pounds per day.
I'm all ready for the rodeo.
Gee, Pop, you look neat, just like the cowboys in that cigarette commercial.
Playing Herman Munster was one of the most physically demanding roles in television history, and Fred Gwynne paid a serious price for bringing the lovable Frankenstein monster to life 5 days a week. The transformation into Herman began each shooting day with a 3-hour makeup application that covered Gwynne's face in that distinctive violet grease paint, added the neck. Bolts created the forehead scar and gave him the sunken eyes that made him look like the classic monster. But the makeup was just the beginning of what Gwynne had to endure. The costume department then strapped 40 to 50 pounds of padding onto his frame to give Herman that hulking, oversized appearance that made him tower over everyone else in the cast. On top of all that padding, Gwynne had to wear special platform boots that added another 4 or 5 inches to his already impressive 6'5" height, making him nearly 7 feet tall in full costume. These asphalt spreader boots were exhausting to walk in and made every movement more difficult and tiring. Now imagine standing under the intense heat of television studio lights for hours at a time while wearing all of this heavy padding and makeup that doesn't allow your skin to breathe properly. The combination of the hot lights, the inability to cool down naturally, and the sheer physical exertion of moving around in costume created a brutal situation for Gwynne. Reports from the set indicate that he would sweat so profusely during filming that he could lose up to 10 pounds in a single day of shooting. He tried to stay hydrated by drinking gallons of lemonade between takes, but even that couldn't completely offset the extreme conditions. The violet makeup would begin to run down his face as the grease paint liquefied from the heat and perspiration, requiring constant touch-ups from the makeup department. Despite all of these physical challenges and the genuine misery of wearing the costume, Gwynne remained professional and later said that he loved old Herman Munster and couldn't stop liking that character, no matter how much the role took out of him. Fact 11. The theme song had secret lyrics.
Spy?
Valeri, are you sure of this?
Moscow wired me this morning. Our missing link is international spy.
When you think of the Munsters theme song, you probably immediately hear that iconic surf rock guitar riff composed by jazz guitarist Jack Marshall in your head. The driving instrumental has become one of the most recognizable television themes ever created, with its distinctive sound perfectly capturing the show's blend of spooky imagery and lighthearted family comedy. The theme was even nominated for a Grammy Award in 1965, cementing its place in television music history. But here's something that might surprise you. That famous instrumental theme actually had lyrics all along, and most fans have never heard them. Producer Bob Mosher wrote complete lyrics to accompany Jack Marshall's music, creating a vocal version of the theme that included lines welcoming viewers to meet the strange Munster family and encouraging them to forget what some people might have said about these misunderstood monsters. However, these lyrics never made it onto the actual television broadcast for reasons that aren't entirely clear. Perhaps the network executives felt that the instrumental version was more effective, or maybe they thought the lyrics were too silly or unnecessary for the show's opening. Sequence. Whatever the reason, CBS decided to stick with the purely instrumental version for the series' opening credits, and that's what television audiences heard throughout the show's 2-season run. But the vocal version wasn't completely lost to history. In 1964, the same year the show premiered, a record album titled At Home with the Munsters was released, featuring the actual cast members of the show performing various songs and comedy sketches in character. The very first track on this album was the vocal version of the theme song, performed by a children's choir that brought Bob Mosher's lyrics to life with a sound that struck a perfect balance between cute and creepy. Fans who were lucky enough to buy or hear this album got to experience the theme song in a completely different way than television viewers ever did. Fact 12. A lost Easter special vanished for 30-plus years.
Chester's cool, Dad, but you're the coolest.
I'll accept that. Grandpa?
I pass.
Between the first and second seasons of The Munsters, CBS decided to capitalize on the show's popularity by creating a special one-hour variety program that would air during the Easter holiday season. On April 18, 1965, which fell on Easter Sunday that year, the network broadcast Marineland Carnival, a unique special that took the entire Munster family on location to Marineland of the Pacific, a popular oceanarium and theme park in Palos Verdes, California. The special featured Fred Gwynne, Yvonne DiCarlo, Al Lewis, Pat Priest, and Butch Patrick in their full costumes and makeup as they supposedly visited the park to help Eddie pick out a new exotic pet fish for the family. The hour-long program was essentially a promotional vehicle for Marineland, mixing appearances by the Munster characters with performances by musical guests, like the new Christie Minstrels, various circus-style acts, and footage of the park's animal shows featuring dolphins, sea lions, and other marine life. The special was shot on videotape rather than film, which was unusual for the time and would prove significant to its fate. After airing just that one time on CBS, Marineland Carnival essentially disappeared. The videotape master was not preserved in the way that film prints typically were, and for more than 3 decades, the special was considered lost media, with only a brief commercial promoting the broadcast surviving as evidence that it had ever existed. Munsters fans and television historians assumed the special was gone forever, just another casualty of an era when networks routinely erased or discarded tapes to reuse them for new programs. But then, in 1997, a weathered kinescope print of the special was discovered and donated to the Paley Center for Media in New York City, finally allowing people to see this lost piece of Munsters history again. In 2022, MPI Home Video officially released the special on DVD for the first time, complete with other rare appearances by the Munsters cast. Fact 13. The same script was filmed 3 times. The development process for the Munsters was far more complicated than most television shows, with the network and studio demanding multiple versions before they were satisfied with what would eventually become the series. The pilot script, titled My Fair Munster, tells the story of Grandpa creating a love potion to help the supposedly unattractive Marilyn find a boyfriend, only to have the potion accidentally affect other members of the family with hilarious results. But this single script ended up being filmed not once, not twice, but 3 separate times with different casts and in different formats before producers finally got it right. The first version was shot in color in early 1964 with Joan Marshall playing Herman's wife, who was then called Phoebe, along with Happy Nate Derman as Eddie in a much more aggressive, wolf-like characterization. This color pilot ran about 16 minutes and was used to pitch the series to CBS and its affiliates, but executives weren't completely satisfied with the results. They ordered a second pilot in April of 1964 with several major changes. Yvonne DiCarlo replaced Joan Marshall, and the wife character was renamed Lily. Butch Patrick replaced Nate Derman as Eddie with a less feral approach to the character, and the entire production was now filmed in black and white to save money. This second version was also considered just a pilot presentation and didn't air during the series' initial run. But even after the series was picked up and went into regular production, CBS still wanted changes to this particular episode. They ordered yet a third version of My Fair Munster to be filmed, this time with some scenes completely reshot, including all of Eddie's scenes because producers decided to add a pronounced widow's peak to Butch Patrick's hairstyle. This final revised version of the script became the second episode broadcast during the first season, airing on October 1st, 1964. Fact 14. The opening credits parodied The Donna Reed Show.
You see, Herman? I told you it was no big deal. You stayed home and hid in the closet for nothing.
The opening title sequence that viewers saw at the beginning of every first season episode of The Munsters wasn't just a simple introduction to the show's characters. It was actually a clever parody of another popular family sitcom that was airing at the same time on a competing network. The Donna Reed Show, which had been running on ABC since 1958, featured an opening sequence that had become familiar to millions of American viewers. In that opening, actress Donna Reed played the perfect suburban housewife who lovingly prepared packed lunches for her family members and then handed them out one by one as her husband and children left the house to start their day, waving goodbye as they departed. It was the epitome of wholesome 1950s and 60s family television, showing an idealized version of American domestic life. The creators of The Munsters, Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, who had previously created Leave It to Beaver and knew exactly how to satirize suburban family sitcoms, decided to create an outrageous parody of this Donna Reed opening for their Monster Family show. The Munsters' first season opening credits showed Lily Munster, played by Yvonne DiCarlo in her full Bride of Frankenstein-inspired costume and makeup, doing exactly what Donna Reed did in her show's opening. Lily stood at the door of the Munster mansion at 1313 Mockingbird Lane and lovingly handed out lunches to Herman, Grandpa, and Eddie as they departed one by one for their daily activities. But instead of a normal suburban family leaving for work and school, viewers saw Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, and a werewolf child receiving their lunchboxes before heading out into the world. This visual joke perfectly captured the Munsters' entire comedic premise, taking the conventions of typical family sitcoms and transplanting them onto a family of monsters who considered themselves completely normal. Fact 15. A Texas couple built a full-scale replica. While many television shows inspire devoted fans who collect memorabilia or attend conventions, few shows have inspired the level of dedication shown by Charles and Sandra McKee of Waxahachie, Texas. Sandra McKee had been a lifelong fan of the Munsters and was particularly fascinated not just by the characters, but by the distinctive Victorian Gothic mansion they called home at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. About 20 years ago, when the McKees were in the process of building houses and flipping properties, Sandra mentioned to her husband that she would love to have a home like the Munster Mansion someday. Charles decided to make his wife's dream come true in the most ambitious way possible. He would build her an exact full-scale replica of the iconic television house. But there was one major problem with this plan. No blueprints or architectural plans for the Munster Mansion had ever been created. The house seen on the show was just a facade on the Universal Studios backlot, with interiors filmed on separate sound stages, and nobody had ever bothered to create a complete, functional floor plan for the entire structure. So Sandra McKee set about creating her own plans using the only research materials available to her. She watched all 70 episodes of The Munsters over and over again, pausing and rewinding to catch every detail of the house that appeared on screen. She studied how many steps it took Lily to walk from one room to another. She examined every wall decoration and piece of furniture visible in the background, and she gradually pieced together a complete floor plan based on what was actually shown in the series. The McKees then spent years constructing this replica in Waxahachie, complete with secret passages, the iconic staircase with Spot's lair underneath, Grandpa's laboratory, and even a coffin-shaped phone booth. They lived in the Munster mansion full-time for 11 years, celebrating Thanksgiving dinners and hosting sleepovers with their grandchildren in the Gothic house, before finally moving next door to a brighter, more conventional home and converting the Munster mansion's garage into an apartment where they now live.